Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Coma from 2019. So, this movie is very visually interesting. For me, this movie has visual eye candy, and that's the thing I immediately enjoy about it. I would immediately go on and say that this movie probably doesn't have enough action, or probably doesn't have a good enough ending. But I would have to say that this is overall a very a soft, great film. Just because I'd probably have complaints about it, or it doesn't feel like I would probably want to go on and watch this over and over again. This would probably be a one-off viewing for me. But very visually interesting film. If you are, of course, a video game person and you're looking for a video game movie, this would be it. This really, to me, is to kind of feel like a number of things, but it kind of feels like the video game Evil Within, or it probably kind of feels like the anime Sword Art Online, like the first season, because after that it kind of goes in these goofy fairy directions, and within the second season of Sword Art Online, the first season really good, but anything they do after that is just kind of goofy and weird. So, also, I would probably have to quickly compare this to Inception, just by the weird, goofy way that all of a sudden these buildings and these places are just kind of oddly put within this world, and all of a sudden you have these people that are kind of jumping from this one thing to kind of flip around and be now making their way onto climbing upon this building. Just visually, just an amazing film. Bravo to the people who worked so viciously hard, putting all of this madness together, so to speak. Just visually, wow, what a great film. Just thoroughly thought it was so much fun. So, really, what is this movie about? So, it seems that we have a number of people that are all stuck in this coma-like state, this dream-like state, and it seems like everybody who is to be in a coma is to all go into this one kind of dream together, where it seems that they're tying in these memories or tying into these certain things, where we just have a barrage of kind of different environments all in one place. So we immediately have Victor, who is to kind of be this kind of oblivious guy, where he has to go on and be taught by the more experienced people that have been here for longer what exactly to do. And so it's kind of like that video game kind of thing, where eventually our characters kind of level up, and we end up finding out that every single one of these characters at some points have a special ability, but not everybody. And so Victor is to go on and figure out what his special ability is going to be in this film. And so, yeah, just really good film. And I can't say that enough. Even though, not everything is perfect about it. Even though I could probably complain about it, but I just had a fun ride. It was a real, I would call this more of an adventure movie than an action kind of film, or or something like a horror kind of maybe film or whatever. Like a real adventure kind of movie. So, anyways, I think with that said, I think that's all that I wanted to say in a very cryptic sense. Definitely check this out on Tubi, or otherwise you're really just not going to see this kind of film. So yeah, good. Yes. So, let's double five this bad boy up, because it's about that time to just go into spoilers about this one, and maybe at the end of the day you can hear what I have to say. One thing that I would probably like to say is I wish that we could have had Reapers being used just a little bit more in this film. because I feel at some points we have kind of our hero characters going on and kind of facing like the NPCs that are just kind of like these normal looking guys, and they're fighting against, of course, our team here, our group that we're focusing on. And I'm like, you know what? I could probably get a little confused, or I could probably go on and like just be like, okay, who's fighting who? Because I'm like, there should be a difference between like the dream, the the dream evil side of things and the people that we're supposed to root for. And there's like a scene going on where like two of these groups are kind of fighting it out. I'm like, I don't know who is who. Like I can't really tell that well because I'm not used to these characters. So with that said, and also they kind of drop you in this movie, and they kind of once we get to where we're at like the later part of the film, then they explain to you what's like actually going on behind the scenes of these guys all being in this coma, and why they're all in this coma, and when they're all in this coma. So let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. So, in the beginning of this film, we of course have Victor, who is to be immersed within this dreamlike world. All of a sudden, he's waking up to this massive building structure that he has built himself. He's going on and looking at this one painting that is to kind of be kind of glitched out. Victor is kind of looking around at kind of buildings that are either decaying, it looks like, or unfinished. And kind of as if like you go into a game and it's not quite ready yet. It's not really polished all that yet. And so Victor is making his way down the stairs, kind of looking at this one man who he isn't all quite that finished yet. It's kind of like half of his body is technically gone. And so Victor makes his way out of this building, just kind of looking around, and he all of a sudden is to bump into a number of these people who are all to tell him like, hey, like come with us, like Reaper's coming, you gotta come with us. A Reaper is to, of course, be this, like I would have to call it like a Venom looking kind of character, because that's the easiest comparison. If you would go on and you have this like weird, goofy looking alien that has these kind of long spikes for arms, and it looks really interesting. It looks somewhat like this character here that we see on the top here, but for this though, like this picture of what kind of goes on here kind of feels a little bit like clickbait with these pictures, because like it kind of feels like the stuff that we're kind of expecting from these photos, like that's not exactly what we're getting in this movie. So it feels like a little bit of clickbaiting going on. But really, when you finally watch the movie, you're like, oh, okay, so it's not that big of a scale, but like it's a really visually interesting film. So, and people may like feel ripped off via visuals alone, but it is what it is with this film. So we have Victor that goes on and meets with this group, more notably characters like Fly or Phantom, and a group of other people that probably may not all be alive by the end of this adventure. So all of a sudden we have these guys kind of running to have them like jump and flip up to the other side of this building that's upside down, because Victor is looking at it upside down. And so Victor follows these guys, and he's like doing exactly what they're doing. He's jumping up to flip up and try to make it onto this building, and he barely like is to like get to the very edge of this building, and they have to like pull him up desperately. So we go on, and these guys are running off because they found yet another character from this dream world, and they're going to take him to the place that's kind of to be like shielded off from of course the Reapers, but they don't quite know it exists yet. And so we have one of the Phantom's men who is to sacrifice himself so these guys can get away, which I believe is a guy named Pilot, if I'm mistaken, because I probably am. So we have this one guy who goes on and sacrifices himself by taking this one device that is to try and delay this Reaper coming after them. And so they go on and take this guy to this hideaway, because they take him into this truck, or this kind of like little old-fashioned car that looks kind of like a bus of sorts, like a very old-fashioned bus, or something along those lines. So, like, I don't know the exact perfect way to, like, it looks like a very old, like, beat up, like, Volkswagen, like, car of sorts, but it doesn't matter. Let's move on. So these guys head into this vehicle, and Victor is mentioning to these people, it's like, what, can this vehicle fly? And they're like, no. Just so, because he's thinking he's not seeing a headquarters anywhere, and so all of a sudden they just kind of make their way through this vehicle to find there's another opening, where all of a sudden there's this secret hideaway like area, and he's like, oh, okay. So we go on and have Victor that's meeting up with a number of people. And so we have Jan, who's telling Fly to show Victor around and get him used to his environment. So we have Fly that takes Victor to his room. And so Fly is telling Victor that if anybody was to tell you that me and Phantom were to be a couple, like, they'd be wrong. Even though it feels like we are, still, no, that'd be wrong. So Fly goes off, and so eventually Victor is to all of a sudden see this dream in his room. A dream, of course, where Victor was to be in some car accident and his car is to be flipped over, and Victor is inside of this car as well as somebody else driving, and Victor is to have this big massive building in the background. And so we have Phantom going on and talking to Victor and saying, like, well, hey man, like, I'm sorry if I was a little bit like harsh with you and whatever, but like we kind of had to get you going and had to get you moving, blah 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 blah. So a lot of just blah 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 dialogue. So we of course have Phantom warning Victor to not go too far into this dream, or he might not get out. And so, because like he would be able to just easily walk into this dream. So, and it is kind of weird because these characters actually do sleep, and they do have these kind of vague flashes of dreams and stuff like that. We have Victor who ends up seeing this sign called Redemption, and he kind of sees like these other kind of flashes of all this stuff while he's dreaming in this world. So we now go on and have the Phantom, who of course is to try and pull Victor's special ability out of him, because it seems that there's a certain number of people that have their special ability. And so like the Phantom is kind of like a like he's very strong and very like this and that, like, and Fly is to have the ability to heal people, because at some point we have Fly who's kind of touching on of course, Victor's face to heal his wound. Gnome or spirit is to be able to kind of sense danger, and the astronomer is to be able to kind of guide people. So, and so everybody has some kind of special ability, but like it's mainly like the main characters of people. So now we go on and we have the Phantom that is trying to figure out what Victor's special ability is. And so he's just sending this big, massive robot in to just start beating the crap out of Victor. And so, and they're kind of shooting these cans into his chest. And they're like, okay, like, so this guy like must not have some ability, but we're just trying to like shake it out of him by like putting this threat against him to force him to show this ability of whatever he can do. And so like I guess he doesn't have an ability. So Victor goes on and he of course is kind of taking a break from his work, and we go on and we see some old man who's kind of talking to Victor, is like, well, hey, like you shouldn't be going on and doing nothing. And like I think Victor is just kind of very defeated at this point, just like, why am I even here? And like this world isn't really real anyways. Like, why am I doing all this hard work if this world really isn't real? Like, so we have Jan that comes in and starts talking to Victor, and we have Jan that really does believe in Victor, and they think that this guy is to be like very special for some odd reason. And so the Phantom is going on another mission, and so Victor is mentioning that he wants to go with them, and Jan is like pressing him to go. And so they're like, well, like, no, like, we don't know what his power is. We don't know what his ability is. And Jan is just like, well, send him out there anyways. Like, it's trial by fire. So we have them go on to this mission that, of course, is to lead them into having to fight off these kind of like unfinished men, let's just say, so we can kind of like have the difference between the normal like coma people versus the the guys that are kind of to be like coded for this world to go up against the people. So we go on, and so we have this group where we can kind of have like the unfinished men are in front of us, but they're also on top of them. And so we have it at one point where we have guys like Tank that is to take this like explosive device, and he is to try and chuck it as hard as he can way up into the air. And he's thinking, it's like, you know what, I don't think that I'm going to be able to hit those guys because they're just like, they're way too far up there. And they're just like, well, try it, just do it anyways. And so luckily the guy ends up like flinging it so hard that eventually it does land right next to all these men, and these men that are in front of him all eventually like die and explode and whatever. And so eventually these guys are trying to make it weirdly to this submarine. And there are some people through this journey, they are start to easily remember certain memories of theirs that of course are a part of this world. And so we of course have one older man that is to remember about this submarine, and so he's going on and getting some items from this submarine. And so what ends up happening is we have these guys that are forced to be holding on to these chains so that way they can go on and not lose this sub, and not to be able, and it's a weird goofy part of this movie. So they realize that the Reapers are coming soon, and so the Phantom is thinking that, or Phantom is thinking like, hey, we should probably leave here. Like, this is like, we could die soon. And so this guy is still working on the submarine as these guys are holding up these chains to just try to keep this submarine at bay. And so what eventually ends up happening is the guy ends up getting the thing that he needs, and all of a sudden he starts sliding off this sub. And so what ends up happening is we find out what Victor's power is. So Victor all of a sudden goes on, and he is to kind of build this sliding thing for this guy to go down. And so he's like, oh my god, like, so like this guy has like a building ability, like he is of course this architect. So they're going on and they're like, wow, like we could really use an ability like that. And so like they're so happy that this guy like has this ability, because Phantom is thinking to Victor, it's like, yeah, we can really use this guy for a lot of things. We can have him kind of build a wall in front of us if we ever have like a like an enemy, or we can go on and just kind of have him kind of build any number of things to just help us. So Jan is to come up with an even better idea, that he wants Victor to go on and build an entire island that could be Reaper free. Because every single one of these little patches of land that they are living on are all to be things that are from memories. And at some point, it's like soon going to be that that eventually it'll get to where like the Reapers will find them eventually. And so if they go onto a land not built off of a memory, that they can go on to this new patch of island and be saved. So everybody is going on and deciding to just leave where they are to go on to make it to this island. And so Jan is telling the astronomer that he is kind of taking over, and the Phantom is just like, well, like what? Wait a minute, like why is he taking over? Like I know that I might have like overstepped my bounds at some point or another, and Jan is just like, no, like the astronomer is taking over. And so Phantom's just like, okay. So the Phantom, who is just kind of getting ticked off because Fly is starting to get more interested in Victor, to the point of Fly now going on, this girl named Fly, who is going on and kissing Victor, and Phantom is to know about that, and he's just like everybody's like betraying me, and I'm not the leader anymore. So we go on and we have Phantom, who is trying to take this device to lure the Reapers over to this spot to go after these people, or to mainly go after Victor. And so we have everybody kind of making their way to this island, and so we of course have Spirit, the girl who can track danger, is saying that there is to, of course, Reapers heading this way. And so Phantom is going on and telling this group, it's like, well, hey, how about me and Victor just go on our own, and you guys make it to this island? And Jan's like, no, like, we need this architect here, because, like, we need him to stay alive to build this island. So, but Jan's hands are tied, so we have the Architect and Phantom go off. So it seems there is a Reaper that makes their way over to them. And so we have it where the Architect is trying to fight off this Reaper. All of a sudden, for Tank to come in and try to save the Architect from this Reaper, because like this guy is to be like the guy, he's the most important guy. And so we go on and we start to see that Phantom now actually is starting to kind of decay, or starting to become a Reaper himself, slowly but surely. So as we have our team running off to make it to where this island is, all of a sudden we have it to where the Architect, Victor, is to wake up from his coma. So Victor is to wake up from his coma, and I'm gonna sneeze here. Excuse me. So we have Victor realizing what the heck is going on. So Victor is to remember that it seems this person named Jan is to have wanted him to come to this place for him to build these buildings. And so Victor is going and driving with this girl who immediately is to actually be Fly. And so Victor and Fly are kind of going on and on about like, well, like, have these people kind of given you money for this job already? And Victor is like, well, it's not about money. It's just that these people actually want my ideas, and they like my ideas, and that's the main thing here, is that they want all of this. So we have both Victor and we have both Fly making it to this town that is called Redemption and has this kind of religious looking symbol-esh into it. So Victor and Fly, or whatever her real name is in this movie, make their way to go on to meet with Jan's assistant. And like this kind of discipled assistant looking guy who's kind of wearing these glasses and kind of has this kind of this attire of sorts. So they kind of bring this guy in, and so they kind of like tell him what's going on. And so all of a sudden, when this guy doesn't want to go on and do this idea and live in this like dream-like state and whatever, all of a sudden we have these characters going on and realizing that these people are like insane. And so Victor runs off to try to make it to this car, and like he's kind of tasing people and he's trying to scramble out of there. And so Victor tries to make it into his car, and we find out that both these people are to make it into a car accident. And so Jan is to take advantage of these people and to comatose both of them, and to put them in with the number of other people that they have taken over time. That Jan eventually reveals who a number of other kind of people are, that at some point might have spent like life in jail, or some characters would have been autistic, or some characters would have gone on to had like in reality like so many problems that really like they would not be able to like live well in the real world. Like they might as well just live in this dream world. We find out that Phantom, he has in the real world no legs. So, and it seems that Phantom is to be the only person that is to fully remember everything compared to everyone else. So I guess Phantom is to have taken advantage of this world, and like Phantom was thinking that he was going to be like, I guess always like the most important guy, but then all of a sudden when Jan started shifting around people, Phantom just started to get really ticked off. So now that Victor is to realize all of this, and that Jan is to go on and tell, of course, Victor like the truth and everything, of course, and so really Jan is telling Victor, hey, like, if you go on into this dream world and you build this island for me, I will let you and Fly, I will let her go. Like, believe me, I'll do that for you. And so Victor is just like, okay, like, all right, like, I'm willing to go on and do this as long as you, like, do what you promised. And so Jan's like, sure, like, I'll do whatever you want. So they go back into the dream world, and so they have to kind of retrace their steps. So Victor is to make it back with the group, and he, of course, to go on to build this island, of course, for Victor. And really, we had like Jan's men who were either to be promised at some point that they were to be put into this coma, or really like these guys were just to be like made slaves just so that way they can go on and satisfy Jan, and like of course go on here and be slaves to Jan, because really he can just kind of fork over the dough anyways, because this guy had gone on and figured out a way to help people, and the government decided to not go along with that. And so Jan was just kind of done with the real world, and he wanted to decide to figure out how there could be another way to run away from all this, run away from the real world. And he just thought, well, like, dream world would make a lot of sense. So we have, of course, Victor, who is to make this whole island. And so Jan, after this whole island is built, Jan is like, man, this is great. And so Jan is, right after this, going on and starting to kill off every single one of his team members, like all of his real, like, close team members. And because on the outside they had gone on and started to kill every single like oxygen tank that is feeding these people like air to breathe. And so Jan is just like, well, like after he kind of tells everybody who they really are, he goes and starts killing one another off. And so he's just like, well, like I don't know who's gonna die first, but eventually it will happen. So instead of trying to fight Jan off, Victor, Fly, and Astronomer are trying to run off to make it to one of their dreams to eventually find this temple that could possibly help them wake up from this coma. And this is where it kind of gets really goofy. So, if this movie wasn't goofy already. So, we have this group run off, and so Jan is kind of tracking and tracing them down because he doesn't want them to wake up. So we go on, and we of course have them kind of running to this temple to try to wake up, and Jan is trying to fight them, and he's trying to, like, everything that Victor is to try to build, Jan is to destroy, because I guess he has this, like, Superman-ish, like, power within him. And so all of a sudden we end up seeing a Reaper who stabs into Jan and kills him off. And we find out that that Reaper is actually to be the Phantom, and he's just kind of helping these guys off to just, like, hey man, like, run off and just kind of just go on and make it. So Victor starts running, and Fly is kind of running after him, and so we start to see slowly but surely that Fly is starting to decay, and she's starting to die off. And so Victor is running, and he wakes up, and so he pulls this, like, tube out of his mouth, and so he goes on and goes to Fly and starts pulling her tube out of her mouth. And so, like, he tries to shake her and he tries to wake her, and luckily she wakes up. And so all of a sudden we have, like, the disciples that are working with Jan. They're just kind of so focused on realizing that Jan is now dead, and so Victor and Fly are kind of sneaking away. And so we have Victor and we have Fly that are going on, like, living normal lives back where they're from. And so Victor all of a sudden is kind of not going on doing these extravagant buildings anymore. He's just going on and just kind of doing these kind of, like, common builds and stuff for these buildings and stuff like that. And Victor is to go on and mention that he is to possibly find a job where they don't have to worry about money. And Fly's like, really? And Victor's like, yeah. So what I think possibly might have actually happened here, with one being that they found out that these people, these redemption people, were to not have done technically anything wrong, because a number of these people had kind of signed their life away to these people, and so, like, these people took full advantage of it, and so there wasn't any real laws that were really, like, broken exactly, so nobody could find anything against these people. And so Fly is kind of talking to Victor and kind of concerned, do you think that they're ever going to come, like, after us? And Victor's just like, no, like, I don't think that's going to be a problem. But I think Victor, because he's struggling to find work, is to possibly go on and work with the redemption people again, and possibly build some stuff within this Coma so they can go on and consistently pay him, possibly. And that might be an interesting story if there ever was to be, like, Coma 2, The Build, or something like that. If they were ever to go on and do a sequel, which would be kind of interesting. Kind of like how Evil Within eventually did a sequel, and, like, the sequel, like, you got to really, like, showcase in the sequel that, like, the world was really like a dream-like state. Whereas in the first, like, Evil Within, like, you didn't realize until, like, the very end of the story, and you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So, with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, so hopefully you went out of your way to thoroughly enjoy this movie if you went on and checked it out at some point. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for going on and reviewing anything that I have reviewed at some point. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, buddy. Bye, buddy.